Hello and welcome to the felicitously titled Mr. Chapple's Handcrafted podcast. Very glad you could join us today for this episode. We have another fantastic and interesting guest. Before we get to the guest, let us just remind everybody that this is sponsored by Close Call Creative, your one-stop shop for creative direction and digital media solutions. As always, my plead to you is, if you like it, please follow us on the YouTube channel and on Spotify. My wife would like to retire on the profits from this podcast. So without further ado, we will introduce our guest for today, David Murphy, songwriter and bassist for Widower's Fire. David, thank you so much for agreeing to come on this. Tell us a bit about yourself, and then we can dive into some questions and talk about your past, your present, your future, and all the other things that come our way.
So thanks for having me, and delighted to be here, if slightly terrified. So yeah, I'm the bass player for Widower's Fire. I'm their principal songwriter, though we'll maybe dive into this a bit later on. Everybody pitches in on the creative side. I've been playing for a very long time, and I spent a bit of time this week sort of reflecting on my so-called musical career, as I've decided to call it. And most people's musical careers, they start with a hiring, and mine started with a firing. So back when I was about 16, I was the manager of one of the school bands in St Mary's College in Dundalk, where I'm originally from, called The Great Divide, founded by my still best mate, Paddy Breen. We grew up together in Dundalk, and his brother was a guitarist and a real inspiration. I'm the eldest in my family, and he probably was the closest I had to an older brother figure. And I couldn't play anything worth talking about, so I was installed as the manager. And the band did their first gig, I think it was in Blackrock, just outside Dundalk, and we were terrible, and we didn't get paid. So Paddy called a meeting at school on the next Monday, and Fergal, the bass player, he got fired. And I basically laughed nervously, and he said, "I don't know what you're laughing about, Spud," because that's what they used to call me when I was at school. "Don't know what you're laughing about, Spud. You're a crap manager. You're also fired." And I think Paddy looked at my sort of crestfallen face and said, "But there's an opening for a bass player if you fancy that." So basically, I cobbled together £25, and I bought myself a Jazzmaster Rossetti Egmont 1963 bass that basically had the action of a crossbow and sounded like a damp sock, and basically went to work as the bass player for the Great Divide. And we played some gigs. Well, I don't know quite how we managed it. We wound up playing on the back of a stage truck for the Maytime Festival in Dundalk in about 1988. I was like some kind of glorified musical bin man on the back of that thing. And long story short, we did gigs like that. We wound up, I think the most bizarre gig I ever played was with this band. We wound up playing at Dundalk Town Hall, supporting the Artane Boys band, which you'll know who they are. Maybe the audience won't. Basically, it's a band, I think, that were formed for people who are at an orphanage, and they all played.
Wasn't
It's like an
Larry
orchestra
Mullen
type thing.
from U2, like the U2's drummer? Wasn't he in the Artane Boys band, or is that like just some fever
I don't
dream?
know. I'd need to look that. I dare say Larry had left the Artane Boys band before we got
I'm
to them. But
88,
needless to
yeah,
say,
probably.
that
But here's the
there
question:
is
did
footage
you
of
get
me.
paid?
Sorry, go on ahead.
Did you get paid?
Yes, we did. I think we got £25 for that one.
That's not bad.
We paid for the bass. Only it had to go 5 ways. So I mean, it was back. It was 1980s covers. It was Simple Minds and U2 and Something Happens and stuff like that, and a few Bruce Springsteen numbers thrown in. We weren't great, but it was a ton of fun. We did that until I did the Leaving Cert, and when we all parted ways at school, the band basically broke up, and I unfortunately, again, it's a bit of a running theme through my life. I hadn't worked particularly hard at school, so my results were at best mediocre. And I wound up, I didn't have the grades to go to
Wrong with that?
university, so I wound up doing an A level in computer science and Uri. At which point, I joined a punk band. So picture the scene. I go to the first practice. I'm wearing a paisley shirt. I've a ginger afro, a pair of chinos on, and these guys are all 200 zips and stuff, black t-shirts painted with bleach. So I was colorful, but I've that type of music. We played stuff like the Pistols, the Clash, the Buzzcocks. I don't know if you're familiar with Shane MacGowan's pre-Pogues band, the Nips, the Nipple Erectors.
I was
We
not
we
familiar
covered
with them
those
until
guys up.
this very
Well
moment.
worth listening. Very, very musical. The undertones, basically anything of that sort of genre, and it's music that I love to this absolute day. And I know it's something that you love as well. But
This is true.
yeah, that was
Can
really
I just
where
kind
I
of
started
bring
out.
you back a bit? In terms of like your musical origins, did you have a particular musical hero growing up, somebody that you wanted to emulate and you thought like you might follow them? Or kind of was it more of a diverse bunch of people? But
I actually I met a guy in a bar in East Belfast who it turned out that he used to manage musicians and he used to run studios, and I was with my mate Dave, who we'll talk about a bit later on, and he said to me, "So Dave plays guitar, what do you play?" And I said, "Well, I play bass." And he says, "Who on earth wants to play bass? What on earth possessed you? Everybody wants to be a guitarist or a singer. Why be a bass player?" And I said, "Well, I'm a huge fan of Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy." And he actually turned around and said, "Oh, I knew Phil really well. I managed Saturn Studios in London. I helped him and Gary Moore and Frankie Miller and a whole bunch of other people record a demo that they basically got them signed to Vertigo." And we swapped the whole story. I knew the story anyway. I just didn't know this guy's part in it, but everything that he was saying was absolutely spot on the money. So yeah, I think to answer your question, really, Phil Lynott, he had everything. He had the voice, he had the swagger. Um, he wrote some really amazing songs. Some and wasn't just a one dimensional, you know, heavy rock musician. He wrote a lot of stuff across a real wide variety of genres. And I if you actually see in the background, I have the same bass that he used to play in the early 80s. Not well, the same model, and it's one of my sort of prized things in my collection.
that's really cool. And yeah, Phil was such an inspiration for so many reasons, but that I remember reading Eamon Dunphy's book about you too, and Thin Lizzy's heyday was just a little ahead of where I was musically, and I remember Dunphy's description of the importance that had been lost on me as a kid of Tin Lizzy, that it was this kind of public declaration that there was more to this island than just diddly eye and tradition, that there was something very very original, very confrontational about them, that a few years later, that kind of getting a lot of these references and the influences secondhand, I just didn't see. But as I've kind of grown older and I kind of went back and I listened to some of their records and went, "Oh, this is good." And then that comes that appreciation of it's not just the musicality, it's also, the quality of the lyrics and Phil's presence. And where you see him perform, you just feel that presence. Even all these years later.
No, absolutely, and I'm not going to say I model my stage performance on Phil. I'm the bass player on a good day. I do some backing vocals, but I like to be how can I say, I think I play with energy. I'm not one of these bass players who stands on an A4 sheet of paper and tries his best to look cool. I I love playing, and it is literally, it's the most fun you can have with your clothes on, as anybody who plays will tell you.
I,
And
I do have to say, I've not seen you guys play it nearly often enough, but that was one thing that I really got from your performance when I saw you play at the Empire. You were all so happy to be there. Everybody was joyous, and yeah, that inevitably comes forward in the music that you make.
yeah, I think when you have the wisdom of years, you're going, we can't believe we're actually here. We're doing this. That stage, I've seen some of my musical heroes play on. People like Lloyd Cole, um, uh, the four of us. I've seen various other groups across the years, and I'm like going, wow, I actually get to be on this stage. And I think everybody within the band was feeling that as well. The other thing that's worth saying is, Mm. there are people like me who've been at this for years, and then you've got other folks in the band like AK, who's our front man. That was literally his fifth gig ever in his life, and so he was delighted to be there because something he's always wanted to do, and he's never had the opportunity to do it, and he was up there living the dream, as were the rest of the guys.
I love that. Um, if I can kind of broaden it out, leaving Thin Lizzy aside, can you talk to me about, say, three records that explain everything about where you're coming from musically?
Right,
What should we be listening to
that's
understand?
absolutely awesome question. I think musically, where I'm coming from, it's a whole smorgasbord, if you like, of different influences. I think one of the things that brought us together as a band was a love of Lou Reed, and so certainly, yeah, Lou Reed sort of post Velvet stuff. The things like the Lou Reed album, things like Transformer, really, they're textbook on craft, and you can really tell, some of the stuff that he did when he was with the Velvet Underground. You can see, yeah, he's worked on. There's real craft and there's real evolution. So I think, Lou Reed Transformer would be one. I think to go completely to the other side of the spectrum, OK Computer by Radiohead, I think is another record that blew me away, insofar as my younger brother, he's an actor and he's a musician as well. He got into Radiohead long before I ever did, and we were listening to Radiohead one night down at his place in London. We were having this debate about the Bends versus OK Computer, and I said, the thing with OK Computer, I said, it's an amazing record, but who can actually reproduce that live? And when I saw Radiohead for the first time, they reproduced it live in all the layers. Everything was just amazing. I was watching Johnny Greenwood playing a guitar solo while playing the keyboard with the head of his guitar. This you just don't this is insanely amazing. And then I think the other one, it probably brings me back to something more local. They're not about anymore. They're not on the scene. There was a banger band called Kowalski, and to this day I'm a huge fan of theirs. They only did one album, and they did a couple of EPs. Their first record that I heard was an EP called "Are You Noisy Sunshine State," and see, when you hear stuff that is so good, it just makes you want to give up, because it comes to them so naturally. I think when I first heard them in 2006, they had a combined age of 76, and there were four of them in the band. And it's like,
Please tell
how
me
could people
it's
that young create stuff like that?
this is not a band I know at all. So, are they on Spotify's or anything out there
Yeah, yeah,
often?
yeah.
Okay,
I'll send you some links afterwards. But yeah,
do.
really good. They were in the same sort of genre as Two Door Cinema Club. In fact, I think there were cousins who played across the two bands. But I genuinely thought that Kowalski were a far superior group. Sorry, Two Door. Apologies for that, but these guys, I really got them. And one of my musical heroes, Tom Dunn, the lead singer from Something Happens, he's almost like the equivalent of John Peel in the South. And he described Kowalski as the best unsigned band in the history of the universe, which I thought, well, on the strength of that recommendation alone, I'll give these guys a spin. And that was 20
Okay,
years
I
ago
definitely
now,
have
and
to
they
fill
don't
in
add up to
the gaps
76
there.
anymore, but what a band.
Well, if this becomes a really famous and love podcast, we might get them back together. um, yeah, I'm really intrigued by Radiohead because they're a band that when they were releasing albums like OK Computer, I lived in a house in Galway where there was a listening party the day it came out, and I went, yeah, I suppose it's nice, it's fine, and really didn't think an awful lot about them for decades afterwards until my youngest came to me and told me about this great underground band that they had found. It's called Radiohead. Have you ever heard of them, Dad? I went, might have.
Rings a bell.
And they've become a huge obsessive fan, and through that have kind of reopened my eyes to Radiohead's music. And like, I was playing some of their stuff just today and go, wow, actually, yeah, I let a lot of this go past me when I really shouldn't have. And unfortunately, we couldn't get tickets for the last time they toured, but there was a group called A Night of Radiohead who played Belfast Cathedral, and it was just an incredible space to hear that music. And there's also, I'll forgive me, I cannot think of their name, but they're a again a Radiohead cover band that played Voodoo at the kind of the end of last year. And yeah, so like the youngest comes along with me and goes, oh, this was a B-side off this obscure record, and going, wow, I love that dedication. But again, it's music that I'm just again opening up to. And in terms of Lou Reed, I shudder to think at how long it's been since I've listened to any of his stuff. Um, though his album New York, it's not one of his great
Yeah.
albums, but it's one that is. I was given a loan of the CD at a time where you very carefully loaned CDs, and there's something about it. I just fell in love with it. That his his way of writing, his way of communicating, still strikes me as in a league of its own.
Yeah, New York's actually one of my favorite, beyond that sort of 1970 to 1974, 75. It's my favorite record, and it came out around about the time I was playing in my first proper original band. I was at university. It was sort of 1991, and the guitarist in the band, a guy called Paul McMahon, really, really gifted player. He's not with us anymore, unfortunately. He was playing this morning, noon, and night, and like, oh, you should try and write lyrics more like this, and you should try and do this. And he was like trying to, I don't know, indoctrinate me to write songs more like Lou Reed, which I subsequently think I did, but it took me a long period of time to do it. But I mean, things like Romeo and Juliet on that are amazing. Greatest American Whale, they're all really great songs. They're well put together. They're well thought through, and it's as he says on the sleeve notes, it's four guys in a room, two guitars and some drums, and yeah, they made a great noise.
Yeah, they and I remember even from the first time I listened to that album, the one, if I get the name ever so slightly wrong, No Christmas in February. It just haunted me, and it was the way that he had of expressing ideas that was just new and intuitive, and like, it wasn't like he was talking a different language. It was just using the words that you knew well, but just in ways that conveyed something really new and fresh. And I love that about his stuff. Can
Yeah,
we?
I'm not going to try and put myself on a pedestal along with Lou Reed, but I think we've a very similar approach, which is basically we see music as a problem that you solve, and I think from a creative point of view, Lou always knew what he wanted to get to, and it was a case of, right, how do I get there? Like everybody else, he was a flawed individual. If you've read any of his biographies, he was a really good collaborator, but he became a jealous collaborator if the collaborators he was working with were getting better reviews than he was. I think, when you collaborate with people, I think you need to be generous. But again, I sort of see music as a problem I'm trying to solve, and as
I've
pretty
heard
much what
this
I've done over the
criticism
years
of Lou
is to
Reed so
iterate
many times,
on ideas and improve them.
but I think it just kind of speaks to his eternal humanity and possibly quite uh, a nervousness, even at the height of his powers, about who he was and how he was being perceived. But yeah, again, a fascinating individual. You're talking about Lou Reed's creative process. Can I ask you about your own? What does your writing process look like on a day-to-day basis? Is it disciplined? Is it structured? Is it somewhat more chaotic? Because I only get to see, and I'm very grateful that you send me demos of stuff, and I get to see these demos progress, and I'm eternally fascinated by it. But to me, it seems very, very structured. Is that a right perception?
Yes and no. And I think, one of the things that I try and do every day, first up to a certain point, is I'll spend 15 minutes. I'll pick up the guitar. I don't really write on a bass. I generally I write on an acoustic guitar. I'll pick up the guitar. I'll give it a go. If after 15 minutes nothing's working, I put the guitar down and I go back to whatever it is that I was doing. Sometimes you pick that guitar up and in 7 minutes you've got the complete song, and you're going, right, okay, I can now hear, I can basically visualize it in my head, what goes where, and I'm humming the backing vocals. I have, as you can see, I've a small home studio here. I've a Pro Tools setup, so I literally take the idea, I'll create a session, and I'll start with the drums. So I'm playing an acoustic guitar, and I'm basically going dum dum. Okay, that's a double hit on the kick, and build the drums up, for the verses, for the choruses, for the middle eights, for the outros, and then basically get the drums down. Sometimes what I can hear in my head is slightly different, and by the time I've got the drums down, my idea has changed, and the guitar part no longer matches the drums. So sometimes there's a bit of a circular thing going on to try and get it right. And sometimes, if as my good friend Dave Lindsay would say, he's sometimes I think, it's near like you've got like a medieval thing going on. He says you're doing stuff in really odd time signatures and really odd sort of repeats. Um, I'm not quite as bad as I used to be on that, but basically build a song. If I can get uh, a drum line down and a guitar line down, I'm at a sort of a 95% certainty that I'm going to complete the song, and I can be relatively prolific. As you've seen, you've been very, very kind over the last sort of couple of weeks. I've been working on three different songs over the last sort of 2 weeks, and it is just literally when you've got the muse, when you've got that going for you, you pick up the guitar and the first thing you play, you go, that sounds great. And
Yeah,
I do think there's sorry, Robert.
I was going to say what really struck me is the speed of iteration that you go through. That we had a discussion there last week about something that had happened, and you had, to my ear, a darn near finished song by the time within 24 hours it seemed, and I was just blown away because I listened to it several times, put it on the good speakers, and all the instrumentation was perfect on it. Your lyrics were amazing, and like there's part of me that knows I'm not a great music critic. I love hearing music, and because of that, it makes me really poor as a critic. Um, and The thing that just hit me was the speed that you had gone from that initial idea to this amateur's idea of a finished track, and so quickly. Now, I know from your perspective, there's a lot more to do with it, do for it, but I started like, get that on Spotify, get playing that in front of a crowd right now. So, is that typical for you that you?
Yeah, that sort of is how I work. It's basically get the drums down, guitars down, bass down. Once I've got that, then I literally sit down, and I probably shouldn't say it. I sit down. I'm singing along with the music, but I'm not really using words. I'm using sort of scat in order to do it. Then eventually I'll get a phrase, and the phrase is generally the hook that either is in the chorus or takes you into the chorus. So I know, okay, I've now got a title. Okay, now what I do is I sit with headphones on and I play the song and I write the lyrics literally as I'm working, line by line. And then literally when I've got it finished, I'll record it. It never works first time. I try and put too many words into things. So I will sit on trying to think, yeah, here's here's today's effort. And literally I print it out, I'll try and sing it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll go back and I will trim it off. I'll make some of the lines shorter. Generally by about the second or third go, I've got the vocal line down. Then it's okay. I need backing vocals. I can go through this is a strength and a weakness all in one go. I can lay down 15, 20 tracks of backing vocals. So when you hear these very rich harmonies that are going on, it's just all me singing really badly out of tune. And I think, that's, when I think about it, I learned sort of post my university band, and I was working in London 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. You don't have the luxury of being able to collaborate with other musicians. So you teach yourself how to arrange drums, how to arrange vocals, how to do whatever else. And you get to the point where by the time you're ready to put the stuff together, you can already hear it all in your head. And it's basically then a case of, okay, I now have to realize this. So then how do I go about doing that? And then once I've got a track down, I've got a small circle of people I trust, including yourself. I'll send it out, and sometimes I get, yeah, Dave, it's crap. I give up on that one, and I go, yeah.
Obviously, you're not sending any of those to me, or it just
sometimes you
underlines
do,
how
sometimes you
useless
don't.
as a critic I am.
But I've got again my mate Paddy Breen, the guy started in the Great Divide with. I sent him something I thought was pretty good, and he came back and he said, "That's the biggest load of monotone, derivative old crap I ever heard in my entire life." And I'm going, "Okay, tell me what you really think." And I think that's what you want are people who will make you better, who just won't simply say, "Oh, that's amazing, well done, you." I have another mate, Rich Dale, and Rich and I played in a Blues Brothers tribute act a while back. And he'll say, "Well, do you want the usual lazy kudos that you get from everybody else, or do you want the truth?" And those people actually, they make you work harder as a writer because, sometimes, particularly when you're working at speed, the risk is you're taking the line of least resistance.
That's interesting. I wanted to kind of pivot that round to, you've gone through various bands over the years. How did Widower's Fire come to be in its current situation? And I suppose the kind of the second part of that is, with your working setup and how you do it, how do you then collaborate with the rest of the band to get that sound on stage that you want?
Yeah, again, great question. If I go back in time to about sort of 2002, I moved into a little street in Ballyhackamore, and this guy was living two doors down, Dave Lindsay. Dave was two doors down. He was a musician. He was a guitar teacher, and we used to jam after going to the pub. And Then one day he knocked the door and he said, "Oh, I've got a band together. We're rehearsing down here. Do you want to come down and see what you think?" And I remember walking down, going, "Oh, I thought he would maybe ask me to play bass. I mustn't be any good." Okay, and I think that has also been a running theme through my musical career. I wouldn't have 5 years ago. I would not have even considered myself to be a musician. It's like that old joke. What do you call a guy who hangs out with musicians? The bass player. And I certainly fully bought into that. But after a couple of months, he knocked the door and he said, "Yeah, the bass player's left. Do you fancy joining the band?" Totally. Don't have to ask me twice. And he said to me in the car in the first rehearsal, he said, "I did actually think about you when I was putting this together." He says, "How dumb am I?" So we basically, there was myself, there was Dave, there was Pascal Brown, who you might hear about in a little bit, Blair Higgins on drums, Tommy Strait on vocals. And basically we created what became Rev T. So it was a musical history band, as Dave used to call it. It was, again, the Pistols, the Clash, the Specials, Madness, anything that had a bit of energy and anything that you could dance to. And we had a ton of fun on doing that because basically we had a residency in Kitty Daly's every Friday night. I had one of the first sort of cut price wireless rigs. We're talking sort of 2006, 2007. I got into all kinds of trouble and a few bruises climbing on the furniture in Kitty Daly's while playing the bass guitar. Um, Again, it would be a shame not to. But winding forward, a lot of my musical career has been coincidences. Put my teeth back in coincidences, insofar as I'll get a phone call. Dave rings me up. "Hey, we're putting together this Blues Brothers tribute act for one night, playing in the Limelight. Do you fancy it?" Do I fancy it? I've always wanted to play at that stage in the small Limelight. One of the first gigs I ever saw was in there, and I swore to myself as an 18-year-old, I'm going to play on that stage one day. Didn't figure out it was going to take as long as it did. But again, wind forward post COVID, got a phone call from Dave. I'm playing with the John Lindsay band. They need a bass player. Any chance you could learn 6 songs for Thursday? And this is Tuesday. And it sort of brought me back to when I was in the Great Divide. Yeah, they sacked the bass player. We had the school concert 3 days later. Can you learn 3 songs in 3 days? I learned 2. And another guy called Kevin Hanratty, he got up and he did the really difficult one. And I just stood there, did backing vocals, but I was bitten by the bug by that stage. But when I did this whole piece with John Lindsay, John's a great guy. He's an older guy than either of us, and he's got a couple of albums out. He's on Spotify and Amazon, with et cetera, et cetera. And some of his stuff's amazingly great. And they were struggling a little bit for more up-tempo material. The up-tempo stuff was working really well. And I offered a number of my own songs to say, well, if you want, you could do anything with them. I don't really mind. I'm not precious. But I was politely but very firmly told, no, thank you. And I to this day, I did a gig with John on the band across the summer there, a charity thing. But I came away from that going, I really, really want to do this. And I think it was like the winter of 2023. And I was basically in a place going, I really want to do this. How do I do it? And the singer AK is actually he's my brother-in-law. And I'd seen him at a family wedding, doing Elvis to karaoke or whatever it happened to be. And I thought, he's got a great voice. He sings from the diaphragm. That's something I think that is really good. And I got him a vocal coach, Caitlin Henning, aka Dovey. If you've seen her about, she's also really, really special. She spent a year teaching him how to sing not like Elvis. So I had a singer. Then I basically said, okay, I got in touch with Blair, or the drummer from Rev T. Blair sat in for a bit. Unfortunately, wasn't able to make the trip with us. But we had the nucleus of a band, and then I had an ad out for a guitarist. Got this guitarist, super keen as musicians are. I still don't entirely think of myself as a musician. Super keen, until the day before our first rehearsal, can't do it. So the second person who got in touch and said, "Oh, I'm kicking myself. I really like the stuff that you're doing." But I was out with my other half and we were doing something and I missed the boat. I messaged him and he says, "I'll be there." And that's where we got Stephen Donaldson from. So we have the nucleus of this really good band. Stephen's a really, really gifted player and he's got great ideas of his own, but he's also great at taking stuff and interpreting it. And you know, one of the things I said at the very first rehearsal was, yes, you've heard the demos. That's not what I want. I want you to treat these songs like they're your kids. Okay. I want you to make them live. I want you to make them beautiful. And anything that you want to do that makes that song better, I will be entirely up for it. And I've had a couple of discussions with a certain band member who remain nameless, who will say, "Yeah, but how about we change the lyrics to A from what you've got to B?" And I said, "Does it make the song better?" "No, but it makes it easier." I'm not interested in easy. I'm interested in better. So it's really about trying to have that kind of environment where it's democratic very largely, but ultimately it is a case of if if we're putting this out there and I've written it, I want it to be the best thing it possibly can be. And then the icing on the cake, we got Pascal Brown, who had played with Rev T and also with the Blues Brothers, the Boxcar Blues Brothers. He came on board, and hey, all of a sudden we've got this sax playing thing going on. We did our first gig at the Accidental Theatre in January 25. Then our second gig was basically the Sony Battle of the Bands, and I didn't really have any hope for us progressing. We went through the entire process and we came away as winners. As one of the other bands very graciously said, some people say more cowbell. The answer is actually more sax. Um, but that side of things, you know, being able to, and at that stage we had 6 songs, and we got up and we did our 6 songs. Thank you very much. The next week we came back. We learned 2 more songs that we'd written. We swapped in one of those and took one out. And every week we turned up with something different, and we were trying different stuff. And I think that must have ingratiated ourselves with the judging panel. I think one of the big learnings I have about any of these battle of the band type things is don't obsess on the competition. Don't obsess on the judges. Get up there and entertain. And if you are really into what you're doing, your audience will respond to it. The judges will stop thinking like judges and they'll start thinking like audience members. And once you've got that panel in that place where they're not actually thinking critically about what you did, they're just enjoying it, you can make all kinds of mistakes and nobody really notices. That's probably the main reason why I'm in original music is, you know, nobody knows it. So the fun element of it is it can go off in different directions. Hey, we forgot a verse, so we put the same verse in twice. Oh, hey, the solo was twice as long as it normally is. You just do it as you feel it. And I think, you know, to your point, if as a musical unit, these guys are amazing to play with. I've never felt as safe in a band as with these guys. We're a unit. Everybody has everybody else's back. And when it goes great, we have an absolute blast. When it goes wrong, we have an absolute laugh. And that's part of the thing that I think I feel really excited about when I think about the band. And I think that the last piece is, you know, we're writing collectively. We're in the process of finishing our first record. We're writing the songs for the next record, which I think sounds a bit pretentious, but hey ho, that's just I don't really sit for very, very long. And I can actually hear the sound evolving. So I'm going to make a confident prediction, Robert. The next time you see Widower's Fire in action, there won't be sax in every single song because our sax player's picked up a guitar. He's starting to write as well, and I think we'll be able to mix it up. And I think it just will give the sound more texture and more variety as well.
I love that. Um, can I bring you to, like, in a lot of this we've talked about successes and progression, but can we talk about rejection? And what does it feel like, and how do you process it, and how do you learn from it?
Yeah, I sort of thought this one might come up, but I think, everybody thinks, oh, being in a band is great. And like I say, I've been in lots of cover bands. You're you're in these bands and you're doing as you're told. Okay. I work for a large organization. I'm a senior analyst in that organization, and I'm used to being in charge. I'm used to telling people what to do. I try to be kind, but ultimately it's like, this is a set of instructions I'm providing you. You're going to go and do it. The musical side of my life has always been much more of a release. It's like, I'm not in charge. I'm under no pressure here. I turn up, I play my stuff. If the guy who's the musical leader wants me to play it differently, I'll argue the toss with them. Sometimes I'll give in, sometimes I won't. Um, but when you formed a band, you brought all these people in and they're working on your songs, the pressure is a lot more than I feel in my professional life. And when things aren't going well, and in the early days, we were struggling for momentum, getting people to rehearsals and stuff like that, and trying to get our first gig. And you're dealing with, to a certain extent, sometimes people's apathy. And they're going, I've got a job to do, I've got kids to look after, etc., etc. And I fully understand that. But my anxiety has always been, well, if the songs were better, if they were better, if they were stronger, people would be more engaged. I wouldn't have to push as hard as I do. And I think it was a case of, we got to our first gig in the Accidental Theatre in January, and for a band that had never done a gig before, it's up on our YouTube channel. If you haven't played the Accidental, it's a great venue. They'll do a multi camera shoot for you. You pay a fiver, and they take care of everything else. But our very first gig, the second song, AK says, "Yeah, this one's called Taken Away," and you can hear somebody in the audience going, "Yes!" And it's like, you've never heard the song before. Why on earth are you saying yes? But hey, if you clap at the end of it, we're totally fine. And at the end of the entire 6 songs that we did, we came off stage and everybody's going, "That was amazing. How long have you guys been playing again?" We're going, that was our first gig. No way.
I love that. That's fantastic response to get.
And it was just great. Complete strangers were coming over going, that stuff's really, really good. Where are you playing next? Well, I think we're in this Battle of the Bands thing in the pavilion next month, but beyond that, we've got no plans. And once people understand in a band situation where they fit, and I think also that they get the, how would you say, the reaction from the audience go, actually, well, it, it is actually pretty good stuff. People actually enjoy it. Um, it makes them feel better, and that creates a momentum of it.
It's interesting. We started, the question was about failure and being pushed back, and you've taken this complete arc into how those feelings are kind of catalyzed within the band, and how it ends up as that experience of beautiful success. And I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if anything, Robert, it's fear of failure that drives me. I'm endlessly working on stuff. I I'm in the middle of producing our record. I'm still in a place where I'm going, did I make the right decision? Should I have gone to somebody else? We don't have the money to pay a producer to do an entire album. I don't want to do a single or an EP. I've got a story to tell, and the band of a story to tell, and I want to create something on an incredibly low budget that covers that entire story arc. And again, I'm terrified of failing, but it's that terror that drives you forward.
As I have said to yourself and over a couple of pints in the past, this last couple of years has been a complete journey for me. I went from not realizing that there was a new live music scene in Belfast at all to suddenly apparently being deeply embedded in it. And I I take so much joy in now counting actual musicians among people, actual friends. And the thing that I won't say love, but I really cherish is these people that have this huge courage to go and stand on stage, make music, are pretty much all have the same sort of stories, that there is a lack of confidence on the inside, that so many of you are covering over and going, I'll fake it till I make it. um I recently just talking to Carlin Brown, who said exactly the same thing. And the what I was going to say earlier was that I have this one recurring discussion with so many musicians that they go, oh, we didn't like this song, or maybe didn't like the entire performance tonight. And I just keep coming back to the same thing. And any of them that I've played before will have heard me say this. Would you look down and see anybody in that crowd not enjoying themselves? And there's such an appetite for great music. And yeah, as you say, you can sing the same verse twice, or you can make a mess up on this, that, or the other. But there's still people that desperately want and love to be entertained and have a hunger and a passion for that music. So I'm just
Yeah.
grateful to anybody that gets up on stage and has that talent, that they've rehearsed and they've built and they've progressed, and are out there giving it their all. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for this.
Yeah, I think that I've probably been going through a bit of an evolution myself. If you met me 5 years ago, I would have said I was a bass player. Well, today I'd say I'm a songwriter, I'm a bassist, I'm a producer. I've done some work for some other people as well. I'm probably Belfast's cheapest producer, but that's just basic plug there. Um, I think it's not about talent. It's about persistence. Certainly for me, it's about persistence. I see my life, either my personal life, my professional life, my musical life. It's it's a triumph of persistence over any discernible talent.
You
And
could be
and and
talking about me for that matter.
and like anybody else, and to back to your point about failure, we all fail in life, and part of that piece is I've got a choice. I've been sucker punched in the guts. I'm sitting on the ground. What do I do? I can just sit where I fell, or I can get up, dust myself down, and keep going. And yes, when you have your failures, you go through a grieving process as anybody else does. But so long as you learn from it, you go, okay, well, here's what I would do differently if I were doing it again. And don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's really about, okay, how can I make it better next time? And again, yeah, I I have it here somewhere. Let's see. I've been digitizing all of my uh home demos from the 1990s. They're awful. Awful, awful, awful. I can't sing. I don't think I even tuned the guitar. Right? And at the time I was saying, this is amazing. And what I would say to anybody, if you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, whatever else, don't give up. You actually do get better if you persist, if you practice, if you keep going, you get better. You become a better musician as you get older than you are when you are now, because music's like so many things in life. You never fully master it. You never get to the end and go, I now understand music.
The music, I've done
You're
that.
it is infinite. And my my sort of joy in this is I'm now getting to the point where I'm going, okay, I can now recreate what I can hear in my head, which wasn't able to do 20 years ago. But it's now about, okay, how can I take that further? And when you're somebody who's written 400, 500 songs, the biggest challenge I have is not sounding like anybody else. It's sounding like myself. And you're writing this song and it's going great. You know what I said? How 95%, if I can get to the drums on the guitars, it's 95% of the time like, it's going to make a new song. The other 5%, I'm going, there's something I really like about the songs, and then I go, oh no, it's it's my own version of one of my own songs that I've just basically recreated, because you're in the sort of 400, 500 plus song catalog. You're going, right, well, the last thing you want to do, worse than sounding like somebody else, is sounding like yourself. So it's how do you keep um reinventing that? And what I tend to do is I'll I'll write frenetic. I'm in a frenetic writing period at the moment, so I'm in the middle of putting out another collection of my songs. I think this is song 5 that I sent you. It's nearly finished. I'll send you the finished version of it when we finish on this. But it is a case of, once I get started, I'll write until I've got a record finished. I literally record them and put them up in the order that I write them. And it is a case of, you write one and then you go, okay, well, where's the story arc in this going? And I think, as I've always seen myself as funnily enough, a storyteller first and a musician second. So for me, it's always been about the story. And I think when you talk to other people who write, a lot of people write from the first person perspective. And that's great when you're miserable, because there's always something you'd be miserable about. You can write a song about, oh, I saw some leaves blowing down the street. That reminds me of that woman who rejected me 3 years ago. Yeah, I'll write a song about that. When you get into a period of your life where everything's very stable, you're very happy, and you're very emotionally secure, hey, you can't really write those kinds of songs anymore, these really angsty songs. But what I've learned is, you know, I'll talk to people in the pub, I'll talk to people on the street, and somebody will say something interesting, and I'll go, "Oh, that's an interesting way of framing that particular idea, that thought, that phrase," and I'll take that and I'll basically turn that into a song. I can do it really, really quickly, and also it's a real privilege to be able to take other people's stories when people confide in you that they've got bad, dark stuff going on in their lives, and they confide in you, and you're literally going, okay. I'm not going to say anything right now, but when I'm talking to you next week, I'm going to say to you, is it okay if I turn this into a song? Knowing I've already written the song, the lyrics, the music, and everything, it's already done. And the album that I'm working on is basically it's tentatively called Comfort and Agency, and it's about somebody who's in a domestically violent, controlling relationship who gets themselves out of Dodge. And when
And
you see,
again, I have to say, I'm privileged to have been there along the way to hear the various iterations as that's gone by, and um, d- been, yeah, very much taken with your process and the. As you said yourself, it's an unusual way to looking at songwriting. It's an unusual way for storytelling, and it's tackling stuff that most people don't want to touch.
that's probably why we're called Widower's Fire, Robert. My mum Googled Widow's Fire and said I had no idea there was a name for that. So if you're not familiar with it and you're of a sensitive nature, don't Google it. But
Don't Google it.
fundamentally,
It's an education.
the the
Can I bring you to
the
something you talked
just just
about?
just just just
Good.
one final piece on this one, if I may. The stuff that we write, okay, it's entertaining, okay, it's fun, but the actual themes behind it, we write about, self harm. We write about relationship breakups. We write about domestic violence. We write about um, suicide. They're all in there if you look deeply enough. And I think probably why we're called Widower's Fire in the first place is we want to write the stories that nobody else is talking about.
I can only agree. Your collection that I've heard so far, it's themes that nobody else is touching.
So just want to crowbar that one in there.
Yep, not a problem. Where I was going to come to was you've talked a lot about your evolution from first gigs through the Sony Battle of the Bands. You've become quite embedded within this local Belfast scene. How do you see it as a scene? Do you find it, a place of solidarity, of mutual appreciation and support, or do you find more of a competitive edge in it? What has your experience been?
I have a friend called Colin Harper, who's been on the scene for a very long time. I don't even think he knows my second name. He just calls me Opinion Dave. I ran into him at a gig just about 6 or 8 weeks ago, and this guy, he's amazing. He does look him up. He basically does box sets and anthologies for a lot of Irish bands, and he sees me coming up the stairs and he goes, "Oh my goodness, it's Opinion Dave. What opinion have you got for me today?" And I said, "Well, Colin, I've just finished listening to your More Than You Can Chew box set by Horselips," and I said, "It's masterful." And he went, "You actually bought it?" He said, "You must be like one of the 6 people who bought it." But I think I'm conflicted on the scene. I think on the one hand, um, it's great that there's such a vital scene out there, and I think the musicians themselves, including myself, we probably need to do a better job at advocating for ourselves. I think that would be part one, and that means, hey, you know, are we producing enough shows? Are we actually generating enough interest? Are we really bigging each other up when we're um, in situations like this? For example, there are some amazing bands out there. Casual Riots. I haven't seen them live. I can't wait to see them. But I sat and I watched your film of them, and I thought, wow, uh, that's really effortless craft. And I think, if we were backing each other better, maybe this is something that comes with age. And I think that's the other piece that I struggle a little bit with is it's seen as a young person, quote unquote, activity. And I never subscribe to that. I think people look at me and say, "Yeah, who's this wrinkly old has been who's up there doing it?" There was a musician Facebook page that I saw, and they were talking about the Sony Battle of the Bands, and somebody actually said, "Yeah, well, you don't want to do those Battle of the Band things unless you're younger than 17." And somebody else said, "Oh, look, the band who won it last year, they were all in their 60s." It's like, hang on a second, folks. That's a bit harsh. Um, so yeah, I would love to be. You know, I'm a huge advocate for the music that's being created in the in Belfast and in Northern Ireland wider as well. I think there's some really amazing talent out there, and there always has been. But the other flip side on it is that's the supply side of the business. Okay, the demand side of the business is not where it needs to be either. I was down at a concert in Dublin last weekend again with my mate Paddy, and the place was sold out. It was a National Concert Hall. It was sold out. And there were people my age coming to see a band of my sort of era. Place completely sold out. And they brought their kids. And I think in Dublin, I think one of your previous contributors alluded to this as well. In Dublin, they will come to the opening of an envelope. They really will. They want to get out. They want to have a good time. And I still think the scene in Belfast, I think the talent is every bit as good as it is in Dublin, but how do we harness that talent and promote it in a way that makes people actively want to come out? And I think that's
I
not
was going to say
something
that,
we're
for
gonna solve
my
overnight.
hobby horse is that, when people talk about this, they talk about, oh, there should be more government involvement. There should be, more involvement from Belfast City Council or whoever. And, don't get me wrong, Belfast City Council are doing some great things. But at the end of it, there's nobody coming to rescue us. This has to come from inside the scene, people getting out there, growing it. If we've got bands where people are taking their kids, we need to have bands where people are taking their parents. And we have to do more. I was talking to the wonderful Jerry Norman there the other evening, and he was saying, 15, 20 years ago when he started doing this, that on a Wednesday or Thursday evening, the upstairs in Voodoo would be packed. And we had, like, for the opening act, maybe 20, 30 people there. And it's not a big room, but 20 and 30 don't fill that. And waiting for local or national government to come along and fix this, it's not going to happen. And I I realize that, no matter what I do on my own is not going to fix this, but I hope that some of the little things that I do is going to highlight it and maybe convince people once in a while, get off the couch, come see some live music from bands you've never heard of before. You'll have a great night out. But
Yeah,
that's
I'm fully with you. I mean, I cannot think. Uh, I've been going to gigs, locally for probably 10 plus years now, and I've yet to see a band that wasn't any good. Okay, they might not be my cup of tea, but never saw anybody who was like, "Oh yeah, well that's out of time, that's out of tune." There is, and I know I'm overusing the word. There's such craft out there, and it's really about again thinking about the Battle of the Bands or thinking about some of the bands that we've supported in the Empire. That they're all amazing, and you're just going, I, I, I hope we're half as good as these folks are because, we don't want to let ourselves down. Now that said, we get up on the stage and we have an absolute, but the whole piece is really it hinges on everybody having everybody else's backs, and I think if I were to when I'm saying I'm conflicted a little bit, paralyzing when you're playing and the band that was on before you've stayed to watch them, but as soon as they're done, they're packing up and they're gone, and everybody who came to see them is gone as well.
so I'd say let's come back and ask you a question about the future. What are you working on right now that you're really excited by? You've given us some little details about the Widower's Fire stuff, about your own. Am I right in thinking it's a solo album that you're putting
Yeah,
together?
yeah, yeah.
Talk us through what's happened with those, what state they're in, and when we can see them either physically or on Spotify or generally streaming.
I think for my own stuff, I don't really do anything with it. It's just the creative process and what I then do. I know you talked about this a little earlier on. I'll maybe expand on that. What I do, the band have their own WhatsApp group. I'll write something, and so for example, the song that I'm working on at the moment, "The Easy Days," it's like I said, send that to the band, and they go, "Yeah, not bad. Chorus could be stronger." Right? Okay, I'll have a go with that. So we have a sort of iteration backwards and forwards, and um I'll work on stuff until they think it's good enough. What I'll then do is I'm working on my 2026 album, Mixed Signals. I don't do anything with it. I just put it up on SoundCloud. I get random people from around the world. I'm huge, apparently, in Indonesia and in Ukraine. And people will uh, message me and say, "I really like what you're doing. It's very interesting. Have you thought about hiring a singer?" I go, "Yes, I have, but I'm gifted to have a singing voice like a stone rubbing off a cheese grater, so it is what it is." But what I do,
Too harsh, man. Too harsh.
I offer the band the songs. We've, like I say, we've got some really amazing players in the band. They take those songs, and I think about, you know, Adrian AK will basically try and rewrite the words. If the words are better, I'll go with it. If the words are easier, I won't. And I can be quite twisty about stuff like that. Steve, really, really creative musically. He'll say, "Hey, have you thought about a different middle eight? Here's something I was playing with." And I go, that's way better than what I've got. Let's bin that out of my version, and the band's version will do something different. So if you were to compare and contrast some of the songs that the band play versus my original versions, you'll go, hang on a second. If you take Comfort and Agency as a case in point, my version has um, a middle eight. And then Steve has basically said, yeah, well, we could build this onto the end of the middle eight, and it goes into a waltz. It moves from 4/4 into 6/8 time, and I'm going, hadn't thought about it like that. That's actually really good. Let's use that. It makes it better. So the whole process is really, really exciting to be in, and we're rehearsing at the moment every other week, and we're basically working on new material. It's fine playing the stuff that you learned last year, and that's fun, and the audiences tend to like it. And when you've people who've seen you 3 or 4 times saying, "Oh, I really like that one. That one's really good. That one I think you should put out as a single," and you're going, right, okay. The songs are like your kids. Okay, you've got several kids, and it's very, very hard to be objective about your kids. Okay, we think they're all amazing. My daughter's she's actually a bass player in her own right. She's 14. She's in a school band. It's like history's repeating itself. But the songs are like your kids, and when people come up and say, "Oh, I really like that," or in the case again of Comfort and Agency, when we played it at the Empire last time, and I did a bit of a, this is what the song's about, and I saw somebody in the audience start to cry. And afterwards, when we were done, she came to the stage door and said, "Oh, I'd love to talk to you." That just was, I've never heard a band speak as passionately about quite a sensitive topic, and it really meant a lot that you guys took the time out to write it, and that and to say that and explain really what it's about. So that's what just makes it endlessly rewarding. In terms of future stuff, we are 3/4 of the way through our album. This will be, when it gets released, probably the cheapest album that has ever been released in Northern Ireland. We have a budget of about £1,000. We're at about, we've spent £345. We're about 3/4 of the way through doing the thing. I've been overwhelmed with generosity from people who've helped out with artwork and helped out with various other bits and pieces. My mate Paddy, his ears will be getting warm at this stage. His brother's a really well known graphical artist, and he's done work for the David Bowie estate. And I had sort of suggested to Paddy, would he be able to help us out? And Paddy says, well, you know, my mate's niece is an artist in the south called A.E. Mac, and she's promoting her first album, and Paul wasn't able to help her with the artwork because he was busy on other stuff. But somehow he found the time to help us. So it's amazing when you do get creative people who are able to support. So we got great artwork. I now have to work on making sure that the actual recordings live up to the quality of the artwork.
As I said, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, that side of things is exciting. Like I say, there's a real story arc to the album, which I think is really quite exciting. And I think, by the time we get it finished and everything tracked and mixed, it's one of these albums I'd like to think you'd start on track 1 and you get all the way to track 11 and you go, right, I felt something there. I'm not entirely sure what it was. I'm not entirely sure I even liked it much, but I felt something when I was listening to that. So that side of things, I think hopefully I had plans to have it out before the summer. It looks like it's going to be the autumn at this stage. But the other bit that's exciting, well, there's 2 elements to unpack. and again, it's sort of spurred from something that you said to me a couple of months back about being middle of the road, and I had this absolute horror or terror of being middle of the road, and I think I look at some of our earlier live performances and I go, yeah, we could push that a bit harder than we did, and certainly on the record, it's got a sort of tighter, harder, edgier sound, and the new material that we're working on, um, I think will be much more in a sort of a rock vein in terms of you've heard the stuff that I'm doing myself. There's a lot more punch to it than subtlety, for want of a better word, and I think
Whether
we'd like to do stuff more in that
summer or
direction.
autumn, we'll look forward to that record coming out, and we'll do our best to promote it. This is the point where I ask you to think more a little philosophically, and to think, if you could go back from that early start in getting fired as a manager in Dundalk, up to the present time, if you could go back and change one thing so that it had a different outcome, what would it be?
That that's actually a really good question. I think it sort of ties into what drives people who are creative. I think it's that fear of failure. It's that if I put this out, will people laugh at me? Whatever else. I think if I could transport myself back in time, I would be saying to myself, hey, you know what? Have a bit of self belief. Okay, what you're doing is good, and some of the stuff that I was writing in my sort of teens and 20s, some of it's actually still stands up today. We've put slightly more modern arrangements on it, and it works. And I think music can, if it's done well, can stand the test of time. And I think I would simply be saying, have a bit more belief in yourself. Put yourself out there, take risks. People laugh at you, so what? Go for it. Don't be in a place where you hit 50 as I did, going, I wish I'd done this. And again, thinking back to my time playing with John Lindsay, there's a guy who's late 60s, early 70s. He's still out doing it. And I thought, well, you know what? John can do it. John started basically when he retired. You know,
Never too late to start
what
these.
it is never too late, and you should never stop. It's the people who succeed ultimately are the people who have the most self belief, who are the most persistent, and and aren't put off by rejection. They just simply see it as a learning, and that they put what they learn to better work, and they make their talent work harder for them.
That's a really good thing to take out of this. As our final question, I invite my guest to turn the tables and hit me with a question instead. Do you got one for me?
I probably have one. I might even have two, but we'll see how we go. I think one of the things that struck me. I think you made a huge first impression on me when we first met at the Empire, and I was like, wow, this guy's really into this stuff. And the more I've gotten to know you over that period of time, you have this absolutely amazingly eclectic range of hobbies and interests. And I think I remember you said your wife put it really well. You collect interests, you collect hobbies. You know, where do you find the time to do that and do a job?
Um, my life is not as quite as I portray it on social media, and I have many things that I love doing. I probably do them a lot less than people realize. I seem to have got this reputation that I go to every gig. I've accidentally created this impression of omnipresence. It's completely not true. Now, if I wanted to, and I had no other ties in my life, I could be out 7 nights a week. Um, I I never want to be in a place where it becomes a dullness or a trudge. But it started by accident, and I'm having a great time. And I realized that I'm in a really privileged position in my life and in my career that if I want to try something new, I have the time and the resources to do it. I took up wood turning because my wife saw me watching wood turning videos, and I found that they were a great stress relief. And she said, "Well, why don't you do it? Why don't you find a place that's doing a course?" I found a place out by the international airport that they took you for 2 days, and you came back with the worst bowl you'll ever make. And it's your first one; it's going to be the worst. And when I was there, they said, "You're having fun. You're not any good, but you're having fun. Would you be interested in buying this lathe?" And I went, "Yeah, why not?" And so, yeah, I bought a lathe. I still would turn. I have a great time for it. Um, I find that it brings me an awful lot in terms of mental health. That I'll go out, I'll spend some time turning wood, I'll spend a lot of time sanding wood, and I come back relieved and stress free. In the same way that going to see bands. I love the live music, but it does a lot for my mental health as well. And people say, "Well, what are you getting out of it?" I'm getting a lot out of it. It's just not counted in pounds. And I I am so lucky to be at a place where I can just try stuff. I found out there was we talked about the Accidental Theatre, which is a place I dearly love. Um, I found out they were doing a course on field recording. I thought, I don't know anything about this. Why don't I give it a go? So as I think I sent you photos yesterday, 4 a.m. I was standing out in the middle of Victoria Park,
Victoria Park, yeah.
recording the dawn chorus on the solstice. I love that I am in a place where I can be so curious. I come back to the famous quote that Walt Whitman never said: "Be curious, not judgmental." And the more that I give myself space to be curious, the more fun I'm having. And so long as I have the opportunity and the finances to make that reality, the more I'm going to keep on doing it.
And you should shamelessly plug your new film is going to be playing in the Accidental on August 14th.
I'm doing that enough anyway. We'll just do it one more time. Yeah, last August we filmed Madam's Last Discovery with what turned out to eventually be 6 cameras, and we spent a lot of time afterwards putting it together. With They recorded great sound from the venue. My youngest became the editor of the whole affair, with some wonderful help from Alex Close of Close Call Creative. And now, with the help of Accidental Theatre, we are for one night only putting it on the big screen on the 14th of August. And tickets start from £12, folks. So if you've made it this far, go buy a ticket, come along, have a great time, and yeah, we'll see you there. With
I'm
that,
back from my holidays, so you can count me in.
excellent. Um, if there was ever a great thing to live your life by, it is that idea of be curious, not judgmental. And I realize that most people these days think that it comes from Ted Lasso, but wherever you get the inspiration, take it. With that, I am going to say, David, thank you so much for being a guest on this. And to everybody that has journeyed this far with us, thank you very much. This has been another Handcrafted episode, and I hope to see you at the next gig.